There was a lot of things that I stayed up crying and praying about, and everything started happening the way it was supposed to happen. If it's for you, it's always going to be for you. I get a phone call from ABC 10. Hey, is this Samuel? I'm like,
wow.
Yeah. They're like, hey, we heard your song. We want you to come perform it on TV.
We have a very special guest in studio this morning who's performing a new single with the one and only Young Sam.
And so you're just sitting back, praying, not worrying about the results, not overthinking things, waiting for an obvious answer that God spoke to you, and then you're moving that way?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's
like, you know,
it's so simple.
Sounds crazy. Yeah, it
No,
sounds so
it doesn't
simple,
sound crazy. It sounds too simple.
There's no such comfort, I should say, as having a roof over your head. And that's such like a huge thing right now in California.
Society is accustomed to seeing human beings suffering. That's a human who is in the same city as you, same zip code, and living a completely different life.
Lifestyle.
And we've gotten just too accustomed to that.
You can pray and have faith, but if you don't look out for others, who's going to look out for you?
Well, where are you from and where does your story start?
First of all, my name's Samuel Casca, aka Young Sam, here in Sacramento. I was born in Lagos, Nigeria, but I've been in Sacramento since the age of 10, so Sacramento's Sacramento is my new home, but at the same time still have connections back home to Nigeria. And where does my story begin? I don't know. I've always been such an adventurous kid. Always been interested in art. I didn't really get into music up until like the age of 10 when I first came to the United States, and I kind of used music not necessarily as like I took music as a form of expression because you're a kid in a whole new country, whole new culture, didn't really speak much, still trying to figure out life.
Yeah.
10-year-old kid trying to adjust. So I started off with writing poetry as a form of expressing myself. And then the older I got into like drumming, I got into piano, I got into guitar, I got into more instruments, playing at my church. And I thought about it, I was like, well, you're technically already making the beats.
Yeah.
You're already drumming, you're already playing the piano, you're already playing the guitar.
Poetry, you got
you're
the
already
lyrics.
writing poetry, so why can't we translate this into lyrics and into eventually full songs and full body projects to express myself? And it took a while to finally get the confidence and set things up, and then I finally decided after high school that was going to be my route. So
full time, just like, hey, I'm going for this.
Yeah, literally full send. I built a studio in my house, and then I figured, let me mess around with it, see how it works. But obviously, like any artist out there knows, or any creator out there knows, you're your own biggest critic. So it took a little while to figure it out. And then I worked with a few people, and then eventually I got confident enough to like really develop my art, develop my sound, develop my story. Like I figured out what story I wanted to share and how I wanted to share it so people can listen to me. And here we are.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Tell me what life in Nigeria was like for you.
Life in Nigeria was very interesting because my family was a little bit more on the wealthier side, but at the same time, you get to see a little bit of everything because your neighbor could be going through it, or
Sure.
you know, the person down the street. It's a very huge community where everyone is so connected and everyone communicates, even based on the difference of your status or your financial wealth or whatever. Everyone is so communicative, and we all share stories. We all share what's like folklores. We all have tribal stories that keeps us all connected, no matter how different you are. So I can go to my neighbor's house, and they're very like inviting, they're very welcoming, and they'll tell you like, hey, this is how life was for us growing up. The kids are in the same community, so they kind of try to teach everyone in the same way, you know, like respect your culture, respect your elders, respect yourself, carry yourself in a certain manner, because you might not necessarily have the money, but that doesn't define who you are. How you present yourself is what defines who you are. So that's kind of how life was like growing up in Nigeria. Just very adventurous kid. I feel like a lot of my adventures started from there. Got into a whole lot of trouble trying to, you know, you're a kid trying to figure things out. So that's definitely where a lot of my sense of adventure developed from. So yeah.
Yeah. Where did that go awry? What happened?
For example, I just needed to know how things worked. I was that kid where it's like, how does this work? What makes this work? And I asked a lot of questions. So I just like I don't want to say I had a job as a kid. This was like 6, 7 years old, but I developed such a sense of independence where like I would go to neighbor shops and be like, hey, I will sweep your floor at a barber shop and you pay me X amount of money. Or I would go to like a shoemaker place and be like, hey, I'll sit here and help polish some shoes for you. You just pay me an X amount of money. So that sense of independence and adventure kind of just like grew into a thing of its own where it's like I learned to kind of like stand on my own and be like, hey, what can I do to get what I need? So even when I moved to the States, I got in a lot of trouble at school. Teenage kid trying to fit in here and there. And what my mom would do was like, she would buy me like, for example, at the time, PlayStation 2 was the biggest thing out. So when I got in trouble at school, she would take it away from me and only give it back to me during school breaks or holidays, summer breaks. But then I came up with an idea and I was like, okay, if I make my own money to buy my own stuff, if I got in trouble, my mom wouldn't take it. She can't take it from me because I paid for it on my own. So then I would go to Goodwills and find like action figures, like wrestling action figures or just Barbies, whatever. And then I would sell it on Craigslist. So that's how I made my own money and got my first iPod Touch.
So entrepreneur, it's just in you.
Yeah, it's always been in me. And my mom's a businesswoman. So that sense of entrepreneurship has always been in my family. And then driven by the ideology of like, I can't lose my stuff if I get in trouble, which at that time was my mindset, not knowing it would set me up for something bigger and better in life, where I had the idea of like, if you wanted to get it, go out there and figure out how to get it.
You got to get it. You got to put the work in.
Exactly. So that's kind of how like, that's what I mean when I'm saying like my sense of adventure, like my adventure was just trying to figure out why things work, how things work, and how I can better myself in general. So
what was the biggest challenge growing up in Nigeria that we kids wouldn't have here or that we might not know about?
Honestly, one of the biggest challenges I would say is access to like education or even just access to having some kind of free will. I'm going to elaborate on that part. Access to having some kind of free will is more so of like, you're governed by everything. Like everything you do has to have a purpose. So for example, kids here, you don't have to figure out what you want to do in life until it hits you.
Maybe ever?
Exactly. Maybe until it hits you. That's a nice way to put it.
Yeah.
But growing up in Nigeria, you have to know what you want to do because even though there's a lot of people around who are not doing much, there's also a lot of people around who are doing a lot. There's not really an in-between spot. So you can have someone who's a shoemaker, for example, and then in the same place you have someone who's a doctor or lawyer or nurse or things of such nature. So growing up, you have to start thinking, it's like, where do I want to be? Where do I see myself at? What path do I choose? And families play a huge role in that because your family might not necessarily have it right now, but they see you as that person who can go get it for them, for the family.
So they kind of
guide you towards that direction. So for example, I have a bachelor's in psychology and communications. That's where I found myself to thrive at. But growing up, my mom was kind of gearing me in the direction more towards where we have family at, which is like being a doctor, being a lawyer, things of such nature. And I tried out a couple of the courses. It wasn't for me. But luckily, I was here in the States to be like, I don't want to go to school for that. But certain kids back home don't have that option because they have to do it because they need to be the one to help, in a sense, quote unquote, break the generational curse of poverty. So your family's forcing you like, hey, I need you to be a doctor because I need you to make money so we can survive. So that sense of free will it's very hard to choose sometimes what you need to do for you because you have so many other people you're thinking of.
How was the process of getting over here? Can you describe that? Is it like it's a big deal, right?
No,
for you to be here? Like it's a big deal?
It was a lot. It was a huge deal. My mom did her part over here, filled out the paperwork she needed, and lots of stuff on our end because at that time as a kid, you don't really understand the full length of everything that's going on. I just know 1 week we're here doing like a DNA test to make sure my mom is my mom.
Wow.
And then the next day you're going into the embassy for an interview because they have to ask you questions like, do you know anyone over there? Like, what do you do here? Like, what does your parents do here? Things of such nature as a kid you don't really think of. It was a tedious process. It took a while. It took a few years. Eventually, after all the interview process, we were able to secure a green card to come here, which we did, and then the process then begins again because you apply for citizenship at the age of 18. So from that 8-year gap of me being here, I literally had to tidy up my act in the sense of like, you can't get in any type of like criminal trouble because
Sure.
you will get deported, and you just have to make sure your head is on straight, which is great because I mean, I commend my mom for that. I'm the only child. I'm the only son in my family. So I have 2 sisters. So my mom raising a boy by herself who from the age of 10 up until 18 can get in so many different activities
Yeah.
and get in so many different troubles and endeavors where he doesn't belong. I still don't understand how my mom was able to do it because I know there was a lot of days where she was like, man, this kid is putting me through it. But she kept raising me in the right direction in life and kept me afloat. Like I said, growing up in Nigeria, you grow up with those traditional values, and then you move here to a whole new world. Kids behave differently. Those values that I was instilled in as a kid is not the same values that a lot of kids live by here, where it's like respect your elders or get your education, things of such nature, like know what you want to do. And just for my mom to be able to make sure I kept those values,
Hats off to her.
Yeah, hats up to her, definitely. So, yeah.
Wow. What was the biggest culture shock coming over here that you remember?
The seasons. That's definitely
Oh, weather.
The weather was definitely. Honestly, it still plays a huge role in my life. I've been here for what, 20, almost 20 years, 19 years now,
Yeah.
almost 20 years, and I'm still really not used to winter.
Yeah. It can affect your psyche too.
It can, because I moved to the States. I was in New York for a while, and then I moved to California around late October, early November. So I experienced my first U.S. holiday, which is Thanksgiving. And then came the winter season and stuff like that. So everything happened. It felt like everything happened so fast for me that I wasn't able to really process. Like, okay, you're in a different country, and we actually have season changes in this country, and then there's a holiday called Thanksgiving. Like everything was just all, and then Christmas, and Christmas. My first Christmas here was a little different from every other Christmas I experienced as a kid, because back home in Nigeria, Christmas is more than just like gifts. Like it's more about spending quality time with the community, because the family I grew up in, you spend time with the community, you like hang out. It's more so family time rather than what do I have to buy this person or
Yeah.
So
how
my
much did
mom-
I get?
yeah, exactly. So like coming here, my mom was trying to like play into the American culture for Christmas, where it's like, we have to go to the store because I want to buy you this. We have to go to the store because I want to buy you that. And then everything it just all happened at once. And I was just like extremely overwhelmed.
Yeah.
If that's the right word to use there. I was just extremely overwhelmed because 1, I'm away from home. 2, that was the first Christmas my whole life I spent away from my grandparents. So it was just like, whoa, what's going on
That's
here?
a lot.
I mean, I enjoyed Thanksgiving. I enjoyed the turkey. But as soon as everything kind of transitioned into that holiday season, everything became such a culture shock, in the sense where like everything moved so fast. Because usually back home, holidays we're celebrating from December 1st into the New Year's, but it's in session. But everything moved so fast for my first holiday here, because it was just go, 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 go. It's like, we have to go buy this because we have to make food on Christmas Day, or we have to go to the stores and get Christmas gifts to put on the Christmas trees. And it was just like, man,
That's a lot. That's a lot. I was just chilling, hanging out with my neighbor friends. And
literally, like, it's a lot. Like, even like I'm still like I said, I've been here for almost 20 years. I'm still trying to get used to it. Like, even with my fiance, like, she understands like Christmas is like still something that I'm still unraveling. So she's bringing more of the Christmas culture into my life now as an adult. So I'm slowly embracing it.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. So it sounds like the biggest pivotal moment growing up that shaped who you are is the immigration. What about adult life after 18 and getting citizenship? And
Adult life, honestly, you just start to fill in the pockets. You know, you just start to see from around you, like we were talking about before the podcast began. You just kind of see like where you fit in. You learn. I started to learn. Saw some people around me go down the wrong path. Saw some people make some right decisions. So you just, for me as an adult, I started figuring like, where do I want to be? I enjoy the new freedom I have being in the United States. And you learn like people go to jail here.
Yeah.
That's not fun. That's not where you want to be because your freedom is taken. So imagine coming from somewhere where you feel like you didn't necessarily have freedom to come somewhere where you have freedom just to give away your freedom doing something reckless.
That you didn't have to do.
Exactly. And this is by choice. It changes a whole lot of your point of view. It changes whole lot of how you think. So growing up, like as an early teen into adulthood, I've always just stayed in school, try to make the right decisions to where like I don't pigeonhole myself into a position I don't need to be in life. And at the end of the day, my whole goal was to make my mom proud because she invested so much to get me to where I needed to be able to make my own decisions, for me to be able to have my own free will or make my own decisions. Is like, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to study in school? I wasn't necessarily forced into like, you have to do this, and that. So that was where a lot of my thinking was as a early teenager and adult.
You talk about freedom, lack of freedom there versus here. What does that look like? When like less freedom there, what does that mean?
Less freedom there in the sense of like a lot of things are regulated because everything is so traditional. You follow traditional values, you follow traditional rules. So it's pretty much like it's scripted in the sense of like, hey, this is how we did it. This is how your grandparents did it. This is how your parents did it. You kind of have to go along those lines and do it the same way too. And which is crazy because what's that quote where it's like, if you keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting change, that's the definition of like insanity or something along those lines. So it's like, that's why I feel like not too much change, or you don't really see too much change out of Nigeria in the sense of like the politicians are corrupt. There's not really much going on for the educational system, and there's lack everywhere, like in a lot of places. But at the same time, there's a lot of places where it's now developed and very urban, but you have that split where it's like, hey, am I going to stay in this ideology of like, this is how my parents did it, so I have to do it? Or do I try to find a new path for me to be able to succeed? Versus here where it's like, you practically get to choose your own free will. Like you get to choose what you want to do. If you want to do anything, like there's a lot of people who are just like, I'm going to stay home today and I don't want to go to work. That's a free will. That's a free choice you get to make, rather than back home where it's like, I have to go to work because if I don't work today, I'm not going to have food to eat tomorrow. Or like, if I don't work today, I'm not going to have a house to be in tomorrow. Where here, like we were saying earlier, you will get 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 notices where it's like, hey, pay your bills or we're going to shut the lights off. Back home, you don't pay your bills, you have no lights. There's no, hey, maybe we'll give you 1 or 2 warnings. It's like, no, you owe us, and that's it. So that's kind of what I mean, like in a general sense of having that free will to make decisions.
How is the medical care different there versus here?
Man, that's a whole thing. Yeah, no, the medical care there is absolutely different. Honestly, growing up, I didn't really hear much about like medical insurance. Up until I came here is when I started realizing what medical insurance was. Because back home, we have a lot of holistic treatments going on. So like it's very traditional to where like, oh, you have a stomach ache? Well, drink some water with salt in it, or here, eat this plant, or eat this, or drink this, and you feel better.
Does it work?
Here, no, it does. Yeah. Versus here where it's like, oh, you don't feel good? Let's go to the emergency room, or let's go to the medical room, or the Med 7, whatever it is, and they can try to see, hey, what's wrong, ask you some questions, and then be like, here, try this. This could help. Yeah. So back home, it's literally, like I said, your grandparents did it this way, your parents did it this way, we're going to try it for you this way also, and it usually works. So, yeah, it's very interesting stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, most of our pharmaceutical drugs come from plants at some point. We found an active ingredient in the plant. We synthesize it in a lab. We press it into a little mold, and then Pfizer sells it for a certain amount.
Exactly. Yeah.
But they do come from plants. People don't realize that.
But thank you. There you go. But it's there's a value to it here in the sense of monetary gain. Unlike back home where it's like, it's
culture
part of
and
the
community.
Culture. Exactly. It's part of the culture. And not to say like there are hospitals, there are like surgical rooms and things of such natures that require it. But like based on the little things, like for example, this was like 2 years ago, I was having a really bad stomach ache. I go to the emergency room. they prescribed me like something to use for a stomach ache, charged me $500. And I was like, geez, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Because I could have literally gone home and gone to like a Walgreens or Rite Aid and got the same thing they prescribed me, except it wasn't going to cost me $500 to do it. So it's kind of like back home, you kind of know what to do for certain remedies versus here where it's like, I feel like I need to go to the doctors because I'm so like a lot of people are so dependent on having to go to the medical, like for a medical diagnosis to tell you, hey, this is what you need to take. So yeah, it's a little different. It's a lot different there versus here, where like you did say, a lot of the medicines we get here come from certain plants, but it's so presented in such a way where it's like we're gonna charge you a lot out of it.
What about mental health? So here we have tons of people with bipolar, ADHD, autism, personality disorders. Like there's a big mental health crisis in America. Is that prominent there as well? Do you see a lot of schizophrenia or bipolar or ADHD?
Yeah,
you do.
Yeah, there's a lot of cases over there. But like I said, I haven't been back home in a while. But you know, my experience as a kid was, unless you're like mentally insane, we don't really do much with mental health problems in the sense of like, especially based on the culture I'm from. I'm not sure if there's been a lot of changes, but when I was younger, it's always been like, hey, especially as a man, you can't talk about certain things because it's like
weak or something.
Exactly. You don't want to come off as weak. Like, for example, growing up, I attended quite a few funerals as a kid, but you couldn't really cry about it because one, our culture dictates we don't mourn over death. We celebrate death because we want to celebrate the person's accomplishments. We want to celebrate the life the person lived rather than mourn because we eventually will see the person again. And as a kid, you're like, but why? You know, like, but why? But it's always been like, it's part of the culture. It's like, you're a man. Who, if you're crying about it, then who's going to fix it type situation, where it's always kind of going back to the mental health and where it's like, here you can be like, man, I'm not really having a good day. I think I'm going to take a day off from work to reevaluate or, you know, trying to get myself together. But like I said, back home, it's like, if you can't take that day because if you don't, or if you do, I should say,
you miss out on money.
You miss out on money.
Yeah.
Now, you might not have food on your table, or you might be shorting your payments or whatever. So you don't really think much about things of such nature, especially as a guy, especially as a man.
Yeah. It's
not really something that is addressed.
Yeah, almost like there's not time. What do you think, as an adult, the biggest adversity you've seen that's kind of made you who you are or shaped your perspective?
Oh, man. There's a few, but the main prominent one that I've seen is especially being in Sacramento or even in California, is the situation of homelessness.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest things for me, where it's like it's tough for everyone. Everyone goes through their own situation, and you know, you kind of have to figure it out. Some people are blessed enough to be in positions to where like that doesn't ever have to affect them. Whether it's by inheritance, you have a house given to you or such things. But, you know, being the son of an immigrant, I never had any of that growing up, especially coming here where it's like my mom doesn't own a house here. My goal is to own a house here, so my kids never have to deal with that. But at the same time, in order for me to be able to achieve that goal, I need to work hard because I know it's not just handed to you. So that's kind of like my thing, where it's like, if I put myself in the position of homelessness, how can I buy a house for my kids? Or how can I prepare that foundation for my kids? That's why I work hard, because it's like there's no such comfort, I should say, as having a roof over your head. You could have a roof over your head and not have a food on the table. That will figure itself out. But if you don't have a roof over your head,
that's a whole different game.
It spirals a whole different situations and troubles for you. So that's like my biggest thing. And that's such like a huge thing right now in California with the whole rent control situation going on. And even just like every corner of the street, it's some kind
rough,
of situation.
Man. That really affects me, that society is accustomed to seeing human beings suffering. Like, walk out with a $6 Starbucks and there's someone literally starving that doesn't have shoes. And I know there's drug addiction involved and stuff, but I don't care. That's a human who is in the same city as you, same zip code, and living a completely different life.
lifestyle.
And we've gotten
Yeah.
just too accustomed to that. I don't know what the answer is to fix it. It's above me, but
no, exactly. It's like it's hard, but it helps when everybody plays their part. My biggest thing, every season change. Like for example, beginning of summer or even into summer, or beginning of winter or even into winter, I like to create like care packages. So like I have a group of friends. We'll go out there, especially in North B Street. That's my favorite place to go to because we just hand out free water bottles, and in the winter we hand out socks, essential things that will help you, at least try to help you through the season.
Yeah.
During the summer, we hand out tons of water, like I said, or we'll hand out like snacks or boxes and stuff, things of such nature, because that's how I was raised. It's like you're a community, and the community is only as strong as how you guys hold the community. So you can't see somebody else going through it and bat an eye and be like, no, that's not my problem. Because at the end of the day, that's everybody's problem. Because God forbid I'm in that position. My hope is someone can help me out or try to help me get out of that situation. That's one of my worst fears, is like to be in that position, because like you said, like circumstances do happen in life, but I feel like if you keep yourself on the right path, things do go right, or things can go right for you.
I think so too.
But at the end of the day, like you never know what can happen tomorrow.
Life
but at the
happens,
same time, if we build that type of community where it's like everyone looks out for each other or everyone helps each other out, then we shouldn't really be having this problem. you
Yeah.
know?
What about your spiritual life?
I'm a Christian.
Okay.
I try to abide in the teachings and the way of the Bible,
Like the 10 Commandments?
the 10 Commandments,
Okay.
and a lot more. What would Jesus do in that type of situation? Growing up, I did grow up in being in Africa. I grew up in different religious views. I grew up with different religious views. So I had family who were Muslim. I had families who practiced Christianity and who practiced other type of religion that we have back home in our culture. But I've always gravitated towards Christianity because it's really big on looking out for the other person. It's really big on helping out the other person. So I try to practice in that way, because that's how my grandparents raised me. Is like, it's hard because they didn't necessarily bring it up as like part of the it's from the 10 Commandments.
Yes.
But the way they try to preach it, it's like traditional values where it's like look out for another, or even going back to like the whole looking out for your community type thing. But it's still from the Bible where it's like look after one another, and don't murder, don't exactly, don't lie.
The
like
obvious
you
stuff.
think it's like simple traditional values, but it ties so much into Christianity. That's why I feel like I gravitated more towards Christianity and practiced the.
Have you ever seen miracles in your life?
Oh yeah. I think I'm a walking miracle myself, because when I was born, I wasn't supposed to be here.
What do you mean?
In the sense of when my mom was giving birth to me, she had complications to where I was pretty much gone. But through the prayers she made, I'm still here today, 29 years later.
Wow.
So like I think my life is one of the biggest miracles I can testify to, because like there are a lot of people who don't have the opportunities that I have, and based on the fact whether my mom prayed for it and it happened, or I've prayed for it and it happened. Like migrating here was a whole process, like I was explaining. But my mom was very strong in her faith. She prayed about it every single step of the way. It happened. A lot of people can call it chance or luck or whatever, but I see it as like it's a miracle, because there's a lot of people back home in Nigeria who are financially capable of going through the same process that I did to get here.
And they're not here.
Visas get denied, or one reason or the other, they're not here. So I think like my life is a perfect like mirror of what a miracle is, because I've experienced so much and defied so much odds that I don't even think it's luck anymore. I definitely feel like there's somebody looking over me and making these things happen for me. And even in my family, like everyone has their own story they can share of how they feel like God has intervened in their life to where they are who they are now, or got through certain situations. So,
What happened at birth? Was it a cord?
Yeah, cord.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you came out just not alive.
Not alive.
Dang.
Yeah, and it's crazy because I think it's a very interesting story, because my mom shares this story with me every time, and I'm just gonna kind of go down the path real quick. So
Sure.
pretty much when that whole situation happened, my mom prayed, and from what she tells me, she said she dedicated my life to Christ in the sense of she told God, if you bring this kid back to life, he belongs
yours.
to your house. Exactly, he's yours. And growing up, my mom will always share with me, like, even while I was still trying to figure out myself at an early stage of my life, I stopped going to church. Because like I said, I grew up in the church. I was an instrumentalist in the church. That's kind of what got me on the path of music. But I felt like I started growing away from church because I would work on Sundays, or there was always something going on. And my mom always shared with me, she's like, I just hope you know, like, you might not be in the church right now, but this was the she reminded me every time, like, this was the circumstances when you were born, and whether you like it or not, like, your life was kind of dedicated to Christ, so eventually, like, you know, God's still going to be looking out for you. You might not be in the church, you might, like, do whatever, but God's still looking out for you. Fast forward a few years later, I meet my fiance, and her first idea of a date on a Sunday was, let's go to church. And I was like, man,
All
God
right,
definitely found a way.
you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I hear you. You definitely found a way to get me back into your house. And then eventually certain things went through. I had to figure myself out, and I rededicated my life back to Christ because I felt like so much happened throughout those like 10 years that I wasn't in church, that I knew like it wasn't just, it was spiritual. It was God intervened in a lot of things for me to make a lot of things happen, because there was a lot of things that I stayed up late nights for, crying and praying about, and everything started happening the way it was supposed to happen. So
Did you, after you pray for something or for a change or to receive something, did you go out and attempt to make it happen, or did you just sit back and wait to see, like, okay, that's a sign, go that way?
yeah,
What
so
did it look like?
that's literally what it is. So for me, I feel like when I pray and I ask God for something, I try not to make the first moves until I feel like this is where God needs me to be, or God wants me to be, in a sense where it's like, man has their own plan and God also has his own plan. God's plans always prevail. So you can pray about something and then wake up the next morning and go do it on free will because you think that's what it is, but there's always going to be something that is going to push you towards the direction you need to go, that God wants you to go because you prayed for it. It's kind of hard to explain, but like certain decisions I've made in my life, because I like, for example, like I'll pray about something and then I'll go out interacting with people and someone will be like, hey, have you thought about this? And I'm just like, that's crazy.
Okay, so is that the most common way it comes to you, is through other people saying
exactly,
things?
It comes
Okay,
through,
so
like
it comes
other
through
people saying it, or just you just being able to have the physical, like you just have that physical feeling where it's like, this is where I'm supposed to be. So for example, I was when I worked at the bank, and I got moved to a new location to go help out, and I did not want to be in that location, but I literally prayed. I was like, God, if this is your will for me to be here, let me know this is your will for me to be here, because I was at that time commuting almost an hour every day to get to work. My first day at that location, I sat down with a client. We're talking about an auto loan, and he's like, man, I'm reading the book of Proverbs. And I was like, I literally just finished the book of Proverbs this morning.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we had
So
a
you're supposed to be
whole
there.
hour and a half long conversation about the book of Proverbs. We didn't even care about the auto loan after the end of that. But in a sense, for me, that was like God telling me this is where I needed to be at that time. And then eventually, feel like almost a year into it, I've had several different encounters with other people who we talked about our religious views and kind of had communications based on. And when I felt like it was time for me to leave that center to go somewhere else, because I wanted to be closer to home eventually, my transfers weren't going through. So I was like, man, what's going on? Like, you know, I'm praying about it. Nothing's going on. And then one random day, one of my coworkers comes up to me with his Bible, and he's like, hey, I see you read your Bible every morning before, work starts. Do you mind if we share the word for a little? So eventually, a couple times, me and him read the Bible. God kind of put it in my heart to plant that seed to like kind of keep, because he had questions about his faith also. So the best that I could, I was helping him answer those questions. And literally a few weeks later, I got moved to a location closer to home, and I was just like, all right, I get it. Like,
that guy needed you to have that interaction.
exactly.
That's
God
awesome.
needed me to be there for as long as he needed me to be there to be able to intercede and kind of speak life or plant that seed in that my coworker's life, before I left, because I was getting really restless about the fact that I'm literally driving back home in I-80 traffic every day. Like,
yeah.
I'm tired of this. I'm tired of this. And I'm like, I need to leave this location, Lord. But nothing was changing. Like, it's always, hey, we're trying to find a place for you closer to home. We're trying to find a place closer to your home. And then eventually I was just like, all right, well, if I'm supposed to be here for a reason, I'm here for a reason. And eventually I felt like those reasons started to manifest itself. And then when I felt like God needed me to, like, I did what God needed me to do, the door opened and they're like, oh yeah, no, we can get you closer to home. The location opened for a banker. So here, let's move you closer to home. So,
That's awesome.
yeah. So it's like little things like that where I'm just like, I feel like that's not just coincidence.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's definitely not. And you have to kind of, there's a connection that forms or dissipates based on how you're living your life, whether you're making the right choices or not, or doing stuff that fogs your brain or whatever. Have you noticed that there's times that you feel more connected to God and it's easier to pray, easier to see those coincidences and get directions in life?
Yeah.
And then there's other times where it's not that clear?
Yeah, of course. That goes back to you at the end of the day, where it's like I said, it took me a while to figure my path back to Christ, right? And then while I was still trying to figure that out, like, things were happening for me, but they weren't happening at a rate where I'm like convinced like this is God working in my life, right? I didn't really read my Bible. I didn't go to church. All I did was work. Like, yeah, I was still getting promotions at work and stuff. But I was like, all right, cool. Like, I work hard, so I feel like I deserved it. And then eventually I find my way back to Christ. I get baptized. I start reading my Bible a lot more. I start talking to God more on a day-to-day basis. And I'm starting to get a lot more revelations in the sense of like, this is what you need to do. Because I feel like I can now feel that clarity where it's like when I talk to God or I pray to God, like, I get the answers I need. And it doesn't take like a month or 2 months. Sometimes it does. Sometimes you get the answers right away. But that you can feel that connection is there because you're like, all right, cool. I did what I did, or I did what I had to do. I'm going to leave the rest in God's hands and things sort itself out. Rather than back then where it's like, you're up stressing about it.
Yeah.
Like, you're up
trying
thinking,
to
like,
control the results.
You're trying to control the result. Exactly. You're trying to control the result because you're like, I know God's going to do it, but then you're up at like 1 a.m. like, how can I do it to go get money to work? What can I do to like get myself ahead? And it's like, you really can't. Like, you can't control those. You can't try to pray to God to take care of a situation for you and then you try to control the outcome in yourself, because then at that point, you're playing God. When you're closer to God and you have that connection, you have that faith where it's like, I've prayed about it, I'm leaving it in God's hands, and it plays, like, everything works itself out. So
have you ever felt blocked from that connection based on something you were doing or not doing in your life?
Yeah, plenty times. What I wasn't doing was communicating more with God, or praying more, or reading my Bible. Because going back to meeting up with that client where we talked about Proverbs, growing, like, while I took that break away from church, I've always kind of leaned on what we would call the world's understanding, where it's like you look for results, you look for answers in like podcasts, or you look for answers in other people because they did it this way, so you're gonna try it that way and see if it works for you. But what if that's not God's plan for you? So when I got a lot more closer to God, I literally prayed about it. I was like, God, please give me wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. And the first time I opened my Bible after I got baptized. So after I got baptized, I didn't touch my Bible, like, because they gifted me a Bible. I didn't touch it for a month. One morning, I got in the routine of like, all right, wake up at 5 a.m., go to the gym, get your day started. Between 6 and 6:30, have a Bible study. Just open your Bible and kind of, just try to see what speaks out to you. Eventually, I was driving home from workout one day and it came to my mind, well, I would put it this way. The Holy Spirit spoke to me, read the book of Proverbs. So I started the book of Proverbs. The first passage in the book of Proverbs says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And I was like, okay, I've been praying for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. So this right off the bat. So I read the whole book of Proverbs. And as soon as I finished the whole book of Proverbs, I met that client. And it kind of almost was like a test to me. Like, God is like, what did you learn? Because in order for me to be able to have the hour and a half long conversation with this man about the book of Proverbs, he's a pastor, so he knows his Bible. I'm someone who's just getting back into the Bible. And for me to be able to hold such a conversation for so long, I feel like I got the answers that I was looking for when I was praying for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. The book of Proverbs gives you plenty of wisdom. It's like, if you want to live a straight life or you want to have a successful life, don't commit adultery.
Right.
It's like it gives you so many breakdowns of how to be a strong person in life, or how to be like a smart person, how to move smart rather than just like learning from mistakes. Follow these directions and your life will turn out pretty much the way you want it to turn out. So kind of like I've been kind of holding on to that, like the book of Proverbs, where it's like, even sometimes now where it's like I feel like I am not doing things the way I know I should be doing things, I try to go back to the book of Proverbs and be like, how would someone with wisdom handle such situation? Like the book of Proverbs tells you, don't be quick to anger. I go through situations every day where it doesn't go my way. And like, for example, driving on the road and someone cuts you off and you're just like, going crazy
you
about
feel
it.
Anger.
Exactly. You never know what the result might be. People get killed over such situations. So I have to remind myself, it's like, don't be quick to anger, because the result's never good. So it's little things like that where I feel like you just have to keep practice. It's a practice. No one's perfect. Only one's perfect is God. So you just have to keep practicing to get to where you need to be at that quote unquote perfect status of God. Because eventually that's the end goal, is we're created in God's image. So we want to be perfect, but we're never going to be perfect because we're always going to fall short. So.
Any other story you want to tell?
Music artist, like I said, I got my first big breakout on ABC 10 here in Sacramento with a song called Sacramento Proud, showing homage to Sacramento.
Yeah.
Pretty much becoming my new home. And ever since then, it's been a journey. I've been to award shows. I've been on the radio. I've been on multiple TV stations.
That's awesome.
And I have a new single coming out here in a few weeks. So,
and so you're just sitting back, praying, not worrying about the results, not overthinking things, waiting for an obvious answer that God spoke to you, whether it's through a coincidental conversation or a sign or a physical feeling of knowing, and then you're moving that way.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's
like it's so simple. Sounds crazy. Yeah, it sounds so simple.
No, it doesn't sound crazy. It sounds too simple.
It sounds exactly, but that's literally what the Bible tells you. It's like it's gonna feel simple because you're not the one trying to control your outcomes. So, for example, I stayed up for days trying to send out emails to X amount of people.
Trying to promote it.
Trying to promote it, right?
Trying to control the results.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then eventually, no one was reaching back out.
Yeah.
Nobody reached back out. I'm driving home from work one day. I get a call after I let it go. I literally was just like, I prayed about it after a while. I let it go. I'm driving home from work. I get a phone call from ABC 10. Hey, is this Samuel? I'm like,
wow.
Yeah. They're like, hey, we heard your song. We want you to come perform it on TV. In that moment, I was so shocked. I literally said, please stop playing with me. I don't know whose number this is. I hung up. They called back. They're like, no, this is ABC 10. We're trying to bring you on the segment.
Had you reached out to them prior?
I sent out multiple emails to ABC 10. No one responded. This was like 4 months later, I finally get a call.
And it was after you had let the results go?
It was after I just let it go. Because after a while, you're just kind of like, what can happen? Like, I've sent out literally thousands of emails to every A&R or record label that I can find on Google, where it's like, go on Good Day Sacramento, here, contact this person, contact that person, send out multiple emails. And then I was like, I let it go. Eventually, they do give me a call back and they're like, yeah, we want you to come back. Literally, I kid you not, that same week, I got a call from Good Day Sacramento.
Wow.
That same week, I met a connect at iHeartRadio, and it brought me on for they scheduled me out for a radio appearance.
Wow.
So everything literally happened after I was like, I'm not going to stress myself about it.
Yeah. Dude, that's
sounds
awesome.
so simple, but that's literally what the Bible tells you, is like, all you have to do is have faith the size of a mustard seed. I don't know if you've ever seen a mustard seed, but they're very, 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 very tiny. So
wow. What are the big? That's amazing. So you let the results go and things keep working out. I really needed to hear that. Thanks for sharing.
No, of course. But that's also to say, like, sometimes things might not work out, or sometimes it might seem delay, because if it's for you, it's always going to be for you. Sometimes It takes time. But that's what people also are not aware of, is like it literally takes time. Like, I've had this dream of being a musician since I was younger, since I was a kid. And the age of 19 was when I got that call. So from the age of 10 up until 19,
Yeah.
I was kind of trying to perfect my craft. And then eventually I felt like I had something. And then I put it out, and then I sent out multiple emails, and then it took another 4 months. So it takes time, but at the same time, it's like you can't stress about it, because if it's for you, you can go to sleep and wake up the next day and you get that call where it's like, we need you to come out here for this. This is what we finally got your email, or we finally saw your message. So
Thank you for sharing all
of
that,
course,
dude.
of
Thanks for
course.
sharing your faith and your spiritual belief. What would you say the biggest personal morals are, or the biggest moral that you live by is? I phrased that terribly, but you know what I'm
No,
asking.
I get what you mean. The biggest moral I live by is always like pray and have faith. That's my biggest thing. And then in conjunction with that, I would say just look out for others, because you can pray and have faith, but if you don't look out for others, who's going to look out for you? Because we need something also. That's why we're praying. But if you don't take care of other people, how can you expect somebody to take care of you? I'm very big on giving back, because I don't expect, but I have an understanding where it's like give and you shall receive. But I'm not necessarily looking to receive from people. I'm looking to receive from God. So when you when you do things in the eyes of God that is pleasing, He's more than likely going to bless you back. So pleasing is making sure you walk into Starbucks and you come out with a drink and you see someone standing there, even if it's $1 that you can spare.
Yeah.
Spare $1.
Help them out, man. Even if you know it's going to drugs, who cares?
Exactly.
Like,
Even if you go back into Starbucks and come out with a large cup of water, give it to them, because more than likely Starbucks doesn't want that person inside their establishment, because they have a business they have to promote. So it's just the little things such as that. It's like, take care of each other, and eventually everything will be rolling. Everything will go the way we want it to go.